All right, for our fifth and final video of SWR training, we are going to just talk about kind of trips and rhythms for SWR. So let me get started here. Again, talked about keeping your own log. You don't have to do everything before you do it with your student, but until you get into the rhythm, I highly recommend just practicing before you begin. Take the time to either just glance at the steps, look at the appendix, or look at some of the words, look at some of the cards before you get started. Again, your sections are going to be spelling lists A through Z, and then your reference pages are at the beginning or end of your learning logs. And so you may want to just have one learning log for yourself so that you can practice on it as you get used to the system. Some ways to reinforce spelling. Again, some kids are going to just get this right away. Some kids come in and they're really great spellers. Other kids need a lot more practice and a lot more multisensory activities. This program really has ideas for a lot of different things that you can do and ways to reinforce spelling. Just like everything else in classical learning, the more we can make this a lifelong learning, more ways we can integrate this into our daily lives and homes, our students will kind of get to see that, hey, it's not just when I sit at the table, or it's not just when I'm at school, but I can use these in my everyday life. So as much as you can, read and write the words. There's a lot of great ways to do this and ideas in the spelling enrichments. Okay. Oftentimes we would do at the bottom of each section, there's sentences, so best original sentences. So just having your kids write sentences with the spelling words, or create stories using their words. And write them neatly. That way you're using creativity, you're developing language, you're integrating maybe stories that they're already learning, you're using your spelling words, and you're also practicing handwriting. Okay. The other ways is, especially if you have a child who's having a harder time, or they're just taking a longer time reading. This is one of my own children. Did great in SWR and would sound out all the words and sounded all the sounds, but it just took him or her a very long time to pull things together and read fluently. And so we were really into second grade before he started doing that. And one of the things that was helpful was just to use the words and just read them. And then we would do games like using time yourself, right? And so time yourself and see how many words you can read in a certain amount of time through your spelling lists, ones that you've already done, right? And so you might start back in list A and just go top, but, and, cat, red, 6, right? And maybe it starts with but if you keep reviewing and reading the words, then it becomes more and more fluent. And that's a way to reinforce spelling, as well as integrate that into reading and increase the reading. Multisensory activities. Again, these are oftentimes at the beginning of certain sections. There's ideas of like, hey, you could build a booklet, or using sidewalk chalk. We often traced with our hands in the air, traced on the back of your back, and guessed the word. We also really liked using a cookie sheet, and I would use shaving cream because it was easy to clean up and it didn't smell horrible if you like that smell, but my kids really liked the feel of it. And so we would do a sheet pan and spray shaving cream and kind of flatten it out. And then they would actually just review the words in the shaving cream. So, so they would spell top, and then you just smooth it out to erase that word. And then but, cat. And so I could kind of give them a quiz or a check, but it was a fun way to do it. And it was a pretty easy, quick cleanup for me as well. It's something that I could do with preschoolers or younger kids that could just draw in the shaving cream as my other kids were practicing their spelling words. Again, integration. So use some of the ideas in these spelling enrichments. But if you're talking about subject and object pronouns in FLL, again, integrate that into when you see subject and object pronouns into this in SWR, or one day, 1 week, I might write original sentences. The next week, I might do degrees of comparison, right? So the next, I might have them like in here. One idea is to draw a graphic design with your words, right? So this one, they drew a bow, and because one of the words is bow, right? But then they drew all their words and made them into a bow. So that's a graphic design. Sometimes you could do things with color or write a creative story. Okay, so that's how you can integrate what you're learning. Write a story of fable. What words do you see that you could, if you're learning about animals, maybe there's some animals in your list. Okay, so integrate as much as possible. Another way to reinforce is using our quizzes. And most of our classrooms will do that once a week. They're usually either some of them do them on Mondays, some of them do them on Wednesdays. And then they will do the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of the year, they'll do at least one diagnostic test. They'll just kind of see how kids are doing, how far. There's some diagnostic tests in here that they'll do, and that gives us where their spelling mastery and where their competency is. And then if they're having struggle, just looking at different trouble words and looking at those words. So is there a reason why that word is really hard? Is an exception? Hey, do we pronounce this as a family differently than it's written, right? And so you can think and analyze about that word. It's okay to slow down and do that. Okay, this is a typical rhythm that we don't need me so big. Typical weekly rhythm. Again, some classrooms might do this a little bit differently. Sorry about that. And so, but a typical rhythm might be Monday, they might do a quiz from the previous list. Do some preliminaries for the new list, like we talked about, introducing phonograms or rules or reference pages. Oftentimes Tuesday in the satellite classroom, you're dictating a new list. You might review preliminaries, review phonograms. And this is something I could do with kids in multiple grades, is we could review phonograms and rules together and then dictate each of their lists. You might on Wednesday do a reference page or an enrichment. They might finish the dictation up again. And then Thursdays is often another enrichment, whether that's an assigned enrichment or your choice, and a way to practice, use those multisensory integration resources to master the words. The more your student uses and reviews their words early on and throughout the week, the more long-term memory that will be. There are weeks that Sunday night we were like, oh, there's a quiz on Monday, right? But that's not the optimal rhythm, okay, is to cram for your quiz on Monday morning, because we really want them to see, hey, I want this mastered. I don't want the short-term memory, but it's going to be a blessing to you long-term, to really know the words, have it set in, understand, and not just kind of rush through and memorize so I get a good quiz score. Okay, so the more review you can do, the more you can integrate this into different practice. Say words out loud as you're in the car. Don't make this a stressful thing. These quizzes aren't meant to be stressful. They're meant to have some accountability, also see where students are at and where they're struggling. So again, practice, practice, practice. Okay, so one more time, I'm going to give you an example of how I might dictate a couple words. I would encourage you to keep practicing. This feels like a complicated system, but it's actually a really great way to build tools into your student. I do have students who come in reading, especially if they go to list A. I already know all these words. I know already spell all these words. And I say, that is great. Let's practice with easy words so you get to know the system. So that's going to give you some tools to do really hard words. Okay, that's okay. If you already know these, that's great. Let's just practice the system. Okay, so one more time, we're going to practice. Top. Start at the top and count the words. Top. Top. One syllable. T. A, O, U. P. You would write it. Whisper as you say it. Read it. Say it back to me. Then we're going to look at the words. We're going to proofread them. We're going to analyze them, mark them up. Any connections there? Then we're going to say top. The next word, but, and all the students go, I think this is I don't know, an oversight on the system is that they've listed this as the second word. And so every child thinks this is funny. It's okay. But you can do that, but be careful. But, one syllable. B, A, U, T. You write it, whisper it, read it, say it back to me. I would write B, A, T. We're going to look through it. All first sounds, no markings. And Christ is all and in all. And a, n, d. And you write it. Right. Say it back to me. A, n, d. Now we're going to do a marking. These two words are both conjunctions. And so we are going to do a little bracket around those. And so I would do that with my red pencil. Okay. And, okay. I think we're going to end there and practice, practice, practice. Use mentors, teachers who have, co-teachers who have gone before you, your classroom teachers. I'm happy to be a resource for you as well. Stay in there. This is great for your students to see you learning something new. It's okay for you to say, oh, Mrs. Moore does it like that. She's really great. She is so wise and she is so good at that. I'm learning right along with you, right? If you have questions, we'll have time during the workshop. Feel free to reach out to me, to Mrs. Hobart, or another grammar teacher if you have questions, or another co-teacher, and we'd be happy to walk alongside you. Thank you for listening. I hope that you find SWR rich and full of helpful tools.